Welcome back. We are talking about retirement savings behavior. And so I just painted a pretty bleak picture about our defaults and how it leads us into not saving. And I hope it encourages you, though, to rethink things and how we don't have to be like that and we don't have to be like everybody else, and that we're going to make ourselves financially independent by not doing what the Joneses are doing because the Joneses are living paycheck to paycheck. But today we're talking about savings for retirement and some of our long-term savings. And once again, we're painting the picture here of where we've come from in the United States to where we are today and how we're pretty much underprepared for it. So just to give you the idea that retirement is a new concept that was introduced in the Industrial Revolution in the 1980s. And basically, it was introduced to get all of the old guys off of the railroad lines because they were holding up the process by being too old. So they gave them an out in order to incentivize them to share their knowledge and then just get out because they were dead weight. And then that led to now where we are. And just to put some perspective, as I paint this negative picture about how we don't really save enough, is that this is a new concept. So we're all still learning this fairly new. And by that, when we think about like the different 401ks and the Roth IRAs, these are all younger than I am. I'm 43, but a Roth IRA is barely old enough to drink alcohol. So these concepts are still new. We're still feeling our way in and out of it. But again, this whole idea of retiring at the age of 62 or 65 is generally within the last 100 years or so of an idea in society. So anyway, the way that these also started were through what we call in the United States defined benefit plans. Defined benefit plans. This is where we contribute into our retirement, and the benefits after our retirement are defined. So this is where we get fixed income at retirement. It's a known amount, or our pension that we receive. These are all known amounts. We just put our money in and the benefits are defined. And we still see a little bit of this here in the United States. Some of the retirees that have this fixed income, they know how much they are going to receive until basically they die, and they can make their plans accordingly. Well, when companies finally realize that providing these defined benefits basically means that these employees remain an expense or a liability through the rest of their lives. And so from a corporate balance sheet, these defined benefits really weigh down a corporation. If you don't believe me, ask Ford or look at the Ford or GM, General Motors balance sheets, and you can see that it really is dragging on their stock performance as well. So everyone recognized that quite quickly and have shifted into what is called a defined contribution. And that's where most of us live in this defined contribution world, where once again, we will define what we contribute. That's the known part. The unknown part is how much we're going to have at the end and how much we're going to be able to withdraw. And so we have the defined contribution plan is where the employee and the employer contribute. Employee and the employer, if you're lucky, contribute, and the final outcome is unknown. So the issue here is now the onus or all the responsibility has gone from the employer to the employee. It's all on us. They'll chip in and they'll help. Once you're retired, that's it. They're not helping anymore. And what we're finding out here is that we are very underprepared for savings. The issue is most people don't save enough. Because it's on our shoulders to come up with how much we'll need, and people won't actually go and do this. So just to give you an idea here, 42% in the United States of all employees have less than $10,000 in their retirement accounts. For an average working person, this is, and we're getting rid of the 20-year-olds who are just getting started. This is the average for a 32 to 61-year-old. The average is $101,548. And so you look at that, me too, I go, hey, that's 6 figures. That's pretty good on average. That means you would think, in your mind, you immediately go, okay, that's good. At least half of the people are on their way. Well, that's not the case, because when we show the median number for the same group, it is 17,000. All right, so let's interpret this. If the average is 101, the median, which means the middle number, is 17,000. What is that telling you? Well, for me, that says that from 0 to 50% of the people, if that's 17,000, that means what this just said, we've got half of the people with really low balances. But then there must be something going on that's increasing this number, and it's the end of the spectrum where you have some people who are doing very, very well. So this inequality here is really showing itself in these numbers, that you can still see half of the people now are not as well off as we thought by this initial number. And so we've got a small group that we'll talk about at the very end who are doing very well, but they have their own struggles. But then the rest of us are really, really struggling to get off the starting line and to build enough savings. And the problem with this, as we'll talk about the reasons we don't save in the next video, is with retirement savings, there are no do-overs. So sometimes we can learn, you live and learn, you experience things, and then you readjust. When you do retirement, there's no way to go back and redo anything. And this is one of the biggest challenges, is how do you get somebody who's 25 years old to think about themselves when they're 60 or 65 years old? And so the challenge, though, is, once again, we're all going to have to face this. And would you rather sacrifice a little bit up front so you can then have money to withdraw and have more than enough to withdraw? Or do you want to be that person who is 80 years old and has bad health and really has nobody to help them or to fall onto, and so they have to rely on somebody else or the government or something else? And once again, we're trying to jump in when somebody's 20 or 25, 30 years old in order to say, hey, if we can make just a couple of adjustments here in our retirement savings, we can avoid all of this. But at the end of the day, this is the bad picture, that we are woefully underprepared in general, and that we can't redo it. We can't go back by the time we get into our 60s. So we're going to dig into some of these issues as well as to why we don't do it. But we'll see you on that next video. Thanks for watching, everybody.